Andrew McDonald, coach of the Australian cricket team, welcome.
Thanks for having us, Whitey.
Welcome to the Pegasus Hotel, though you've been here for, feels like about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it feels like we've been here a while. So got a little bit of time to go here with the T20 team arriving and a couple of T20 internationals. So the T20 players have brought a distinct, a lot of energy to the group as they've met for the first time in a while. But yeah, at this stage reflecting on a really sort of comprehensive test series win for our boys, and a few have jetted off already, as is the way, and a few more will be out in the next couple of days.
You're used to this hotel lifestyle, and here in Jamaica particularly, where we've been encouraged to stay in the hotel, which, you know, I think we've all got cabin fever, not just the commentators but the players as well. So how do you get them ready to play when it's either hotel or ground essentially, or is it they're just used to that now because they're professional cricketers?
Yeah, I think places like Jamaica are outliers in that, and the fact that you've got to exercise some caution when you're out. But most places in the world that we do go, we've got some flexibility. There's golf course access, which we've been big on in terms of as a connection for the group, but also to take their minds off cricket. The players have still found plenty to do in and around, and there's a couple of nice restaurants that have been here, so it hasn't been total lockdown here. And it's a rhythm that we're used to. So for you that doesn't do it very often, It might be a little bit strange.
Yeah, particularly here. Okay, it's finished. The Test series is finished. So do you package the West Indies 3 tests up separately to what happened at Lords, or is it 4 that you sort of look back on now? Now there's no more Test cricket until the Ashes.
There is a little bit of connection between what happened in the WTC and where we found ourselves in the West Indies, but really, I mean, the way the conditions presented and the way the Test matches unfolded was slightly different to what we felt coming in our planning. So we'll look to probably dice these ones up on their own and go through what we learnt. And some of the things we did learn, it was difficult for batting. There was a lot of seam movement. The wickets were up and down, and top orders were really stressed within that. And it was a bowler-dominated series, and some people like that and some people don't. But it was certainly fast-moving cricket. And the good thing is, from our perspective, is that there's a few more games into some of our younger players. We saw Scotty Boland back playing for Australia. We went with a slightly different test look-up for that last test that no doubt would have started some conversation and debate around what teams may look like going forward. But for us, that decision was a really compelling information leading into the Test match, what the pink ball would do, match that with the surface, and we made a call, and that saw Scotty Boland probably exposed to a game that we didn't think he would be exposed to. So, and that bowling unit, the way that it's able to just turn up day in, day out, its relentless nature makes it really difficult for any opposition. So that's sort of high-level summary in terms of how we saw it. I'm sure we'll drill into it a little bit deeper, but all in all, a really successful tour, and some big margins of victory when you look back on it.
Was it different to what you thought it would be? The conditions particularly. We had an up and down pitch at Barbados that sort of did all sorts of different things, and then it was a very dry one at Grenada. Then we had a good, even coverage of grass, but maybe too much grass for pink Duke ball cricket in our final test here in Jamaica. So it was really tough, and I can say that as a broadcaster. But from your point of view, is that kind of what you wanted it to be tough ahead of the Ashes, or was it a bit too tough?
I mean, the expectation was that we'd get slightly flatter surfaces historically in the West Indies, and even when we looked at that first wicket in Barbados, that played totally different to the way that we saw it presenting as well. So we were very surprised by that surface, the way that it cracked and went up and down, and the amount of seam movement. We do play with Duke's balls over here, so that does create more seam movement by just the nature of the ball. But yeah, the surfaces did surprise. We felt like there'd be a lot more top order runs, and then the game's going deeper into potentially spinning conditions, and we thought at certain stages on this tour we'd be challenging ourselves on playing 2 spinners, and in the end we challenged ourselves on playing no spinner, which really shifted in front of us. But full credit to the group to be able to embrace that, to be able to find ways through it. The scores that the batters were able to deliver weren't sizable scores from people on the outside, but within the context of the game, in low-scoring games, they were significant contributions. And even if you look at just the decision around Alex Carey being man of the match in the second Test match of the series, it's not often that a player with that fewer runs would be able to get that, but that was well deserved to him.
Before we go into the individuals, it's 3-0, so you can't do better than 3-0. But overall, were you happy with the performance of the team across the 3 matches, or was it a 7 out of 10 rather than a 9 or a 10 out of 10 when that would usually be the case when you win 3-0?
Yeah, it's always hard to say, are you happy with everything? Because the nature of a coach is you're always looking for improvement, and you're sometimes looking what's coming on the horizon. It feels as though we'll still be a little bit unsettled in terms of what our combinations look like at the top of the order with the way that the performances have gone here. In saying that, there's a lot of cricket still to come to be able to gather that information. Shield cricket, it feels like it's going to be the same as the start of last year, where the microscope will be there for certain individuals, and what happens in those games potentially has a great connection to, well, not potentially, we'll have a great connection to the first test in Perth, and we'll probably have the realisation that was going to be the case anyway, and been on the record around what would be the greatest connection to the first test in the Ashes. It's playing cricket in Australia, and those first 4 Shield rounds would be critically important to that, so that still hasn't changed.
So that was what I was going to ask you. Are you disappointed that it isn't as set as you would like it to be going into a summer? Because, as I said, there's no more Australian Test cricket until the Ashes start, which is the big series where we've still got so much conjecture. Or is that doesn't bother you because whatever happens, you'll pick players that are in form, that sort of announce themselves through performance through the start of the Shield season?
Yeah, I think that's the best way of looking at it, is that even from the end of this Test match to the start of the Ashes, if the performances are at a certain level, I still think that there's always going to be discussion and debate as to what our top order looks like in Australia against England, because totally opposition, they play differently, the surfaces are different. So on average, I mean, over here the scores were probably around 4 for 50 for both teams, and probably went down lower on that last innings when we were able to bowl West Indies out for 27. So if you put that into context around how difficult batting was in this series, then it's hard to take a lot away whether people have got runs or they haven't got runs because of just how challenging it was.
All right, we've had the general discussion about the players. Now we can start to drill down on the individuals, and Bharat and I have spent most of 3 weeks talking about Sam Konstas.
Yeah.
He polarises, it's fair to say, all the way back to when he made his debut on Boxing Day. The outside world, the cricket passionate world that are listening to this, are saying he was thrown to the wolves, he's not ready, you've damaged him, all these sorts of things. From your point of view, what has he got out of it, and what does he have to now go back to Australia and work on?
Yeah, I mean, off the top, I don't think anyone's damaged by being exposed to Test cricket, because I think what it does do is it gives you a taste of what that level is like. All the things that come around being a Test cricketer, not just purely going out there marking centre and going about your business. So I think the exposure across the series is going to create some great opportunities for him to go away and reflect and start to gather what it looks like for him. We'll be a big part of that as well. This period of time for any player is a little bit of a decompress. You go home, you'll do your own reviews, reflections, and then we'll get together and start to build out what the winter looks like for him, and then hopefully build him to where he needs to be for the start of the Shield season. And there's no doubt he's got some things to work on, like all our players do, and they continually work on them. I'm not going to expose what they are, because that would be a declaration to the opposition around what we're working on with a player, which wouldn't be right. But he's clear on what they are. He's working on them, and we feel as though across the journey he's a highly talented player, and I hate to use that word talent, but his skill sets over time, I think, we'll see the real Sam Konstas. And at the moment he's juggling, with his aggressive nature, he's juggling his technique, and the way he really wants to go about playing it. But when you've got up and down seaming wickets, it can force you into those corners a lot quicker than some surfaces that potentially are batter friendly, which we were expecting to get here. So
Bharat has joined us, and he's going to ask plenty of questions as well. But the one final one on Konstas that I want to ask you from my point of view, because Bryce and I got in a heated debate at one point about Sam, which you may or may not know about, but just about his role in the team. Was he picked because he was the best opener? Was he picked because he was a right-hander to complement Khawaja? Or was he also picked because you wanted him to have that positive intent to partner up with Aussie? Just give us some of the reasons as to why he was selected over someone, the more experienced Bancroft, Harris, McSweeney, Hunt, Renshaw, the list goes on. Because you've got a lot of options that are there. But why was it that he was picked, and was it to be a bit more positive? Because some of his dismissals or some of his shots were going, what are you doing that for? Like, this is crazy, man. We've never seen this before.
I think if you go back to the original selection against India, there's no doubt that we wanted to throw a different challenge at Jasprit Bumrah, who was really sort of, making it tough work for everyone, in particular the top order. So we felt as though that change at that time was the right thing for our team and the balance of that top order. And then once you sort of get to see a player in work at the nets, gather more information about him, then we believe he's got more layers than just being that sort of ultra aggressive, almost what you'd call a disruptor at the top of the order, and hence why those two tests then extended out to WTC and then extended out to some opportunities in the West Indies. And as I said, we feel as though he's got a big future ahead. He's had a small setback here and in difficult conditions, and so did the rest of our top order as well. I mean, Cameron Green was outstanding in the pair of 40s that he got in that last test match, and you never know how a couple of innings are going to age across the game, but those contributions at number 3 were arguably set up the game for Australia, which is, it's really difficult to say that a couple of 40s can do that, but that's the nature and the conditions that we played in. So I think it was a difficult time for Sam. I think he'll take away some information that will accelerate his growth forward. So I think by him playing Test cricket, I think it's been a massive positive. And even if you look to Nathan McSweeney, a 3 Test exposure against India, arguably one of the best teams in the world, that's going to do him no harm long term. And you see straight back into Australia, he got a sizable contribution. He only got 94 in the first innings of that first 4-day game against Sri Lanka. So the hope is that the exposure then brings the opportunity to then go forward, and then when you go back and work on your game, you come back an even better player. And I think there hasn't been too many that hasn't been the case for.
Welcome officially, Bharat.
Thank you. Helps not staying with you guys. But just on Sam Konstas, just 2 questions. Were you surprised that you didn't see him play even one ramp? And it's a serious question because that's what really kind of sparked his Test career off, and everybody started talking about it. It was great. He brought in more people at the SCG, but just the fact that he seemed, like you said, there seemed to be some confusion between aggression and defense and technique and all that. So just on the ramp, are you surprised you didn't see it?
Not really that surprised with the nature of the wickets when they're up and down and bowlers are holding back of the length. I think that would be a high risk shot. Would he have thought about it? Did he prepare around it? Yeah, there's no doubt you would have seen in practice that most of the players are working on expanding out their games and those types of options to bring into games. So I wasn't surprised with that, just purely by the nature of the surfaces when they're up and down, and Shamar and Alzari and Seals finding back of a length, whereas Bumrah, fuller, skiddier, truer surface made a bit more sense.
And where does it leave the series leave him, Andrew? Like, does he get back into the mix with everybody else when the Shield season starts, or because he's the incumbent, he starts ahead of everyone else in the queue? Like, how does that bit work?
I think it leaves him where everyone else is in terms of Shield cricket at the start of the season. We're not going to shy away from the fact that will be big for certain individuals to go about their work, put some scores on the board, and then for us to look at what we need against England as well. And that's always a nuanced conversation around the opponent, around Perth, first Test match, getting that right. What's the combination of that top order? And sometimes you feel like you get it right, and then other times you have to make changes mid-series, which we did last year. So we're open to all options in terms of the way that we're going to stack that up. And with that comment, it's probably going to create even more debate as to what's happening. But we see him as a player that we'll be using going forward. It will just be a matter of when. And
speaking of players who will need that Shield season, or like your eyes will be peeled on them during the Shield season, is Usman Khwaja one of them? Because you said you had no worries with him after Lords, that you're looking at him for the Ashes, and he said, I interviewed him before the series, and he said you and George have had a word with him, and it's more about what he gives to the team than himself. I mean, this stage of his Test career. So is that where we still stand with him?
Yeah, we see him playing a part during the summer. His ability to navigate through tricky situations across the journey. He's got great experience. We still feel as though he's moving well. feels like I'm having a repeat conversation around David Warner when we went through exactly the same conversation. But the way he's moving, the method he applies, is very repeatable. So we know what we're getting there. We feel as though that will match up well against England. And then it'll just be about the output of runs like it is anyone. And those runs weren't here, and there's a reason why those runs weren't here. It was incredibly difficult, and I think he got 47 in the first Test match, and even that was sort of critiqued as though he's not doing enough. But in the context of that game, once again, it was a sizable score. So it's really difficult to make accurate judgments on both batting units based upon the surfaces that we played on, and you take that into the third Test, which is a pink ball, Dukes on that surface, and that game just moved way too fast and at times didn't even look like cricket. So if you can give me a good form line on what that looks like for the first Test in Perth, then you're a better man than I.
And then to sort of, I guess, defend Aussie, he batted an entire session with that in that situation in the same conditions where the West Indies were bowled out for 27, Aussie was able to bat 2 hours. So, again, and we've spoken about this, Andrew, before, and I guess this is almost an education piece for all our listeners. What are you looking for when it comes to what form is, what results are? Because a lot of us will just go to averages and scores and say, right, that's it, and you select a team based on that. But what are you looking for as coach? You're one of the selectors to be confident that whoever it is where they need to be or close to where they need to be.
I mean, we look at the repeatability of movement, the way they're making their decisions, and even with you say that with Usman in the first innings of the third Test match, and that wicket was very difficult. There was a lot of seam, there was a lot of swing, so we felt at certain stages there that the scoreboard didn't reflect truly where the game should have been at, and they could have easily been 4 or 5 down quite quickly with the data that was coming through at our end. So to look at that, he was moving well, he's making good decisions, he's leaving, and even in the second innings I felt like the movement, I think he got 14 off 22 balls and he ended up dragging on, but the pull shot was way early, there was a couple of nice drives, so he was moving into the ball nicely. So it's about their movement. No doubt at the end of the day they're always going to be judged about their total output in terms of runs. We don't shy away from that. But, yeah, in conditions that are difficult, what are the decisions you're making? What are the methods that you're going into the game to apply? Can you be accountable to those? And ultimately, can you keep repeating that? And if you get a good ball, you get a good ball. And we saw some good balls in this series that were unplayable.
So I'll ask one more about Cam, and then you can ask about Marnus, because he's your man. So with Cam, that's to Bharat, for those that are listening on the radio and can't see us. So you talked about Cam Green. One of the things that we were all impressed with was the amount of balls he faced, the amount of times he was able to get through to a break and then come out of a break, except for on the last day of the last Test. But the way that he was able to do that seemed to be a development forward. We know he's a nervous starter, and we know he's nervous around milestones and breaks, but felt that was as much a tick as actually the runs that he scored in the low-scoring series in a different role.
Yeah, I think it's a really good observation. We probably weren't surprised by anything that he did in that adjustment to number 3. If you really think back to before he got injured and the New Zealand series and even the pink ball game at the Gabba against the West Indies, where I think at night, he was 9 off about 50 odd balls and got through to the next day, and he was 40 odd and got bowled off the elbow with a ball that bounced. We love the way he applies his process, his discipline, his decision making, and I think if you looked early in the series and people would have been critiquing technique and he was getting his hands out in front, and you're allowed to be nervous, and the nerves was probably bringing about him pushing at the ball, and it was his re-entry back into Test cricket after a sizable break. So we felt as though as it went along he gained a lot of confidence. You started to see those contact points come back up under his eyes, closer to his front pad than earlier in the series, and including the WTC. So yeah, I mean, we've got great belief that Cam Green can bat anywhere in the order, and we've been on the record around that several times, and it was a nice step forward for him at number 3.
Just on one more on Cam, Andrew. I said it a few times, and it was a good time after Barbados to invest in the Cam Green at number 3 stock, because it was progressing, but the chart was trending in the right direction. But once he gets his bowling loads back and he is bowling, do you think you still want him at number 3, or he can slot back into number 6 as that genuine all-rounder?
I will have options once that happens. If he's nailed down number 3 and it looks like that's his position and we can settle that down, then we'll head in that direction. Would that look like some slightly lower bowling loads across the summer? Potentially. That team would then maybe look like it has Webster and Green in it, which will be a debate moving forward. But Bo Webster's holding his own as a bat only, and speaking of guys getting runs in tricky conditions, he's almost made an art of it in first-class cricket, and he's transferred that into Test cricket, which is great to see as a mature player. So, yeah, I mean, Cam Green's bowling coming back online gives us a great problem. But first and foremost, he's a batter, and that's the way we've used him across the journey anyway.
Now, Baz, Andrew's got a meeting in a few minutes, so we haven't got too many more questions with him. So make these questions good ones. Make them laugh, make them good.
Under pressure? No pressure, never. So on number 3 then, so if he is the lock for in the long term, so then what happens to the one who he replaced in Manas Labuschagne? Is opening the only option then for him to come back into the side? Or is he still in the mix for a middle order spot?
He'd be in the mix anywhere, and Marnus has had a really good training block, done a lot of work with Matthew Wade, and I think the benefit of being removed out of Test cricket gives you time to reflect and really get clear on how you're going to go about it. And I think towards the end there, and Marn won't mind me saying this, that there was a little bit of going backward and forward on plans, and at certain stages wasn't clear. He's got great clarity leaving here, which is a successful tour, albeit he hasn't played a game here, but we feel as though it's been a really successful tour for him, and look forward to what he does coming into the early Shield rounds, and then putting his hand up for selection for Perth in that first Test. But he's a quality player. He averages 46 in Test match cricket. We feel as though this wasn't going to be a huge gap before he does return because of the quality, but the start of the Shield season will really shape that.
And batting at number 3 for Queensland doesn't change anything in terms of, because you look at opening batting differently, don't you? It's not this selection committee led by you as a specialist opener doesn't really. He doesn't have to be a specialist opener to open, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. It has to be someone that we feel is capable of doing that role for what we need in that time. So Marnus opened in the WTC. He's batted 3. He can bat middle order. He's a very versatile player, and he's a quality player.
What do you do with Scott Boland, Andrew? Every time you bring him in, he takes 10 wickets in a Test or a hat trick. Like, what are we supposed to do with him?
Ask George Bailey. No, I mean it's a great story. To see him still going, I think 36. There's only 2 bowlers that have passed their 36th birthday that have played, if I'm right in saying that. And his attention to detail, the way he prepares, and prepares not knowing when his next opportunity is going to be, and just making sure he's ready for that. And he's a humble champion, and he keeps delivering, and just a Test hat-trick to add to the theatre that is Scott Boland these days. He does get everyone up and about, and I'm sure there'll be some pressure on us to select him at some stage during the summer. And geez, I wouldn't like to be the selector on duty at the MCG, that's all I'll say.
Just on that, so the Nathan Lyon, Scott Boland swap, was that just a one-off, and it's unlikely it'll happen anywhere else, especially during the home summer?
Yeah, I think anytime you're leaving out the quality of Nathan Lyon, you'd want some compelling information to take you down that path, and it's not too often that we have compelling information to take us down that path. But we trained for 3 days leading into the Test match with the pink Duke ball. We investigated what the pink Duke ball does in terms of the data points, and it was compelling. And going into the game, there would have been questions around why. I think going out of the game, there would have been clarity on why. And that cricket was borderline impossible to play at certain stages there. Some of those deliveries from Mitchell Starc, the way that ball behaved under lights. And so it's a bigger question for what the pink Duke's ball looks like for pink Test match cricket, really. Yeah,
Bharat and I are going to have a discussion about that a little bit later on. So just a couple more before we let you go. On Nathan, did he see it coming? And how did he take it? It's the first time he hasn't been in the team since 2013 when fit.
Yeah.
And it's not like he'd bowled poorly in the series to that point. But how's that conversation go with someone that he's so experienced and he's so close to Mitchell Starc as well in a 100th game?
Yeah. anytime you're delivering that news to a player, it's a difficult moment for starters, in particular one of such quality that has really made that attack function and balance out. And I don't think he would have seen it coming. We were deliberating, debating it, and gathering the information over those days as to what that pink ball would do, and then we just got to a position where we had no other way to go in our minds, and it made perfect sense. And once we explained that to Nathan, like always, they buy in. There was a disappointment, but he got straight back into what he needed to do. I think you saw him on the first day, back into his fitness work, helping the boys out. And I think that's the great thing about this team is it's a great environment. They all buy into it. There's some disappointment within it. There's some difficult conversations that happen along the way, but their ability to buy back in and make the team operate and function, because everyone's got a role once the game starts, whether you're in the 11 or you're outside the 11. The amount of work that those players do on the bench for the players out there in the field, in particular in this heat, is a lot. And it's like no other sport where you get dropped and suddenly you're working for your teammates and you become essentially a runner of some description. So that's unique in sport in itself. But no, he was fantastic. He understood it in the end, and we look forward to building him up for what is a big summer for him.
Just finally, we appreciate your time. It's awesome to be able to spend some time with you at the end of the series here in Fort Knox, here at the Pegasus. But the final question I've got for you, so Bharat and I are going to announce our first test teams for Perth. As you imagine, we're very confident that we've got the team locked away.
As always.
When are you thinking about the Ashes? Like, we've been having breakfast, watching it on the television, the India-England series.
Yeah.
Are you watching that really closely now, forensically going through it all, or do you park that until you have to worry about it? I'm interested in when you're starting to think about it.
We'll watch snippets of it, but at the moment Dan Vittori's back home in New Zealand, so he's drilling a lot into it, just from a sort of coach's eye. So he's watched a lot of it where he's been. So there's a lot of things that are bouncing around in the background around how they may play. What does it look like at the wickets like this? So you're sort of hypothesising as to what it looks like, what quicks are they going to bring, how they're going to challenge us, how their batter's going to take on our bowlers. So all those conversations are happening. So, and they'll continue to happen in the background, not at the expense of what's in front of you. So it's really when you do have a gap to invest a little bit of time. So you build that over time and you chip away at it. And it's hard not to, even as a cricket lover, it's hard not to turn the TV on at certain times and watch India, England. And even that last test was quite compelling, albeit it was England playing a style that's nuanced from their normal style. So I don't know how to describe it or what they're going to nickname that, but they'll come up with something, I'm sure.
Refined baseball, that's what they call it.
Is they calling it that? Okay. Did Brendan say that, or was that?
It's doing the rounds now.
It's doing the rounds, okay. But yeah, you've always got an eye on that. And then the eye will really shift once the Shield season starts and we start to get performances coming in and working out how we want to shape our team. We've got a big physical block to get our players right as well, and that's to full credit of the Quicks and the medical team, their ability to year in, year out present those four bowlers in particular in the shape that you need to get through a summer. So that's a big piece at the moment, is to getting that right again. What games does Scotty Boland play for Victoria? How does Pat go through? What does Mitchell Stark do? And they're going into a bit of a layoff at the moment. Josh Hazel will stay up at that top end series. Mitch and Paddy will miss that to start rebuilding their bodies. They've had some things over time that have potentially had the ability to get worse. So if we can get all those to the position we need, fully fit squad, then we can start making decisions from there. I suppose that's how you sum it up.
It's so exciting. I'm getting nervous just thinking about it, what it's going to look like in the summer. And you've still got these T20s coming up here. You've got one-day games, as you see, in the top end against South Africa. You've got one-day games against India and white ball cricket left, right and centre. And then the Shield games, Australia A games. There's so much to go between now and the first test. But we're still going to name our teams anyway.
Go ahead.
Can I also just...
He's got to go. He's got a meeting.
I'm just going to say Oliver looking really good.
Is he?
Yeah, he's...
making some good strides.
It's like everything's coming through. Like, I've been very impressed.
Nice. I'll pass that on to him. He probably already listens to this anyway, so I'll pass on if not. No, thanks very much. Thanks for covering it as well.